Hello and welcome back. Wow, that is very blue. Let's going a little crazy with the blue here. Let's tone it down a little bit. How is everybody doing? I didn't have the most faith with if this was going to work. There might be some hiccups. This is a bit of the test one. We're going to go. Hold on. Give me 1 second. We're in the wrong spot. There we go. Okay. Look at this. Hiccups. We got the elements aren't choosing the right thing. And fix that. There we go. Okay. Hopefully that's it for the OBS overlays and elements issue. Let's turn our color down just a little bit. Oof, that is not what we wanted. A little better. There we go. There we go. All right. How's everybody doing? Let's see. Where is everybody at? It's probably different times for everybody. I know I set out I put a survey out and seeing what times work for people. Poor Europe, always getting screwed. I don't know if we're going to be synced up well for European time, but we'll try. How is the sound as well? All right. It looks like everything's doing okay. Yeah, there's been London, United Kingdom. Nice. It's probably pretty late there. Well, maybe not too late. All right. Yeah, I there's been not just with obviously the backdrop changes, hopefully a little bit better quality and picture, but we definitely upgraded some of the gadgets and everything. So I'm hoping that helps improve kind of the setup and everything. Arizona, US, island off Maine. Nice. Okay, cool. So we're all over the place. I love that. Yeah. So I guess today we'll see how the stream goes, see if it's stable. I'm kind of watching it. Everybody saw a little bit of a preview at the very start because whatever my OBS wasn't set up right. But I'm keeping an eye on to see if it's stable or not. I've had absolutely terrible internet. And if it works this time around, then I think we'll be good. And we're going to try to find a time to do these more regularly. I think probably what these will be are going to be obviously our writing sessions, right? We're going to do some writing. We're going to talk about it, kind of hold each other accountable, because we are almost we're where I moved and everything. But I've also been working on a couple of really interesting videos, and so I'm hoping that because of the time I kind of spent on them, the quality will be up there and everything. But I'm hoping to have sort of my next video sometime in the next few weeks, and this one will be. I'm excited about it. I spent probably way too much time researching it, but yes, I definitely think that these live streams will also be a little bit of a way for having sort of channel updates and even maybe brainstorming kind of video ideas and everything like that. But what I think that we should do right now is obviously do what everybody kind of came here to do, to sit around and get just a little bit of writing done. I am going to play some music. We were playing some at the start, so we'll keep that going. It's a new thing. Okay, we're trying things out here. So if it's distracting and you want to turn off, just yell at me in the chat and everything. But let's do kind of our first writing session. And then what we'll do after that is we'll kind of see where everybody's at, see how much people wrote, chat for a little bit, and then get some more writing done. So I'm going to throw up our Let's see if I can do this. It's been a while since I've played around with this. So we'll throw that up. Wow, beautiful. And then we'll throw that up. 20 minutes if it counts down. Nope, not going to count down. Let's try one more. There we go. That one's going to count down. Okay, so we'll do that. I'm going to mute myself and let's get a little bit of writing done. Okay. A little bit of a hiccup in the stream, I think. I think it dropped for a minute, which was to be expected, but was very distracting. So I didn't exactly get the most writing done, but we recovered. We fumbled whatever bag we were carrying, and then somewhat got back up. But let's see. Let's take off these guys. I've never watched a writing session. What can we expect? Yeah. Welcome to the stream. This is the first one in a while, so it's going to be a little bit shaky. Not that these are too complicated to get the hang of, but basically what we're doing is we're talking a little bit, and then we break, right, for about 20 minutes, and then come back, kind of talk about what we've been working on. And yeah, and just kind of use this as a bit of the power of peer pressure, hopefully, is what is really in effect here. But how did everyone's writing go? Anybody keep track of how many words they wrote, or want to kind of say what kind of projects they're working on? I've been working on kind of the same work in progress for a while, and I'm getting very close to being done. I think I'm at nearly, see how many words this is right now. Um, wow, can I not find my word count? I swear that's in a different spot now. Yeah, so I am like 20,000 words away from kind of being done, or at least being at the place where I think my or this manuscript will kind of be at. I For this one, I did a kind of a zero draft a while back, and this I kind of have changed the way that I write. I really focus on creating a zero draft that is basically every chapter is kind of like a, I start as like a very like almost like a micro story, almost just like whatever the main scene is. I use that as kind of the block for each chapter, and then every time I go back, I kind of add more and more to it, and obviously more chapters kind of pop up. But I basically just like I look at, what's the average word count I want a chapter to be. So if it's like 2,000 words, and it's that. And then I just divide that by whatever my target word count is, and that's how many chapters that I have. And so I kind of have to think to myself, well, that's how many scenes I need. If each chapter is just one main scene, I kind of structure my zero draft that way. And then for that zero draft for each chapter, I'll either have some notes or I'll have some kind of idea of the progression of the story. And each chapter starts out as like 100 words or something, and those 100 words then become 1,000, and then those, or 500, and then 1,000, and then slowly I try to build off of those almost like microfiction chapters that then turn into kind of the coherent story. And so that's what I did for this one. This one I've been working on for a little while, but I've taken a couple breaks here and there, and I ran into a couple different hiccups with the story, but definitely feel like it's getting to be at a very good place. This would be probably like a second or third version of it, and I think it'll be a pretty clean version. Looks like we had some people join 15 minutes into the stream, doing revisions on my writing for a writing competition. I only managed to fix a passage that helped make my characterization more compelling. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, big fan of people doing competitions. I think that they're kind of a great way to set obviously set a goal, right? You want to submit by a certain time, or you want to, win or place or whatever it is, however the competition is structured. That was really one of the first ways that actually that was the first way that I sort of got published, is that I had submitted to kind of a small online magazine, because they had a call for, themed monthly stories. And that was kind of, for me, what I had first started to sort of submit on, was to join those competitions, because one, they offered a little bit of direction, because sometimes the competitions, they sort of tell you what they want, and it forces you to kind of like write whatever that style is, that kind of story that you might not have thought of. But after thinking about it for a little bit, maybe you come up with a kind of interesting idea that would have been something that you never would have written about, horror romance or something, if they're calling for horror romance, or a zombie thriller or something, right? Sometimes competitions can be themed, and sometimes they can be broad and opened, but the themed ones are kind of fun. Right now I'm revisiting my zero draft for my opening scene of my work in progress. Yeah, I was kind of saying before that zero drafts, I kind of love working on zero drafts. I feel like they're super low stakes. The way that I have been approaching them is kind of back to my roots, and the thing that I really had grown an affinity for writing, which was short stories. That was really the first thing that I had get published, and that was really how I learned to finish projects. And that's all. I think that's like the hardest thing for a lot of writers, is actually practicing finishing work in progresses. And first it was short stories, and then my zero drafts started to do that too. But I wrote my zero drafts as like a bunch of short stories. Each chapter was almost like its own self-contained short story that was really, a way to fuse two different types of storytelling that I like doing. Let's see, what time are we at again? So we've been going for now about 45 minutes. Why don't we, let's see. The date of the stream couldn't have been better, as I am meeting with my writing group tomorrow morning. Awesome. Yeah. That's another thing too, that it's hard to find, I will say, is either good writing groups, or writing groups that are really consistent. I mean, people that I work with, that I think just about everyone that I work with, that I coach for writing and stuff, are in writing groups. Some I started working with, some I'd started working with and they were already in groups. Others I really encouraged it, because it's some of the best way to get, free critique, and not just that, but you get people's perspectives from not just the genre that you're writing in. If you can get a writing group that writes some people in your genre, but also people that are outside of it, that can be really helpful. But why don't we do this? Let's do another sprint. I'm going to throw up the timer. What did we think about for the music? Distracting? Too much? We just want to sit in silence, play our own music? If no one says anything, I'll put it up. There's going to be a little bit of latency too, just because I can see, I can see YouTube yelling at me that there's errors. So I hope it's not too distracting. Okay, cool. All right, let's put the timer up. Throw some more music on. Not that one. This guy here. Perfect. All right, I'm gonna mute myself, get some more writing done, talk some more, and then maybe we'll do another sprint. Maybe we'll do more than that. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay. How did everybody do? That was a lot better. I had actually, this chapter particularly, I had written most of it. I must have been traveling or something because it was, I didn't remember a lot of what I had done before. And a lot of times if I'm anywhere but my home when I'm writing, it just always feels like such a strange stream of consciousness. It just gets dumped onto the page. So it took a minute for me to try to figure out what I was saying. And I usually also turn off, spell check and stuff like that just to not get hung up on if I hit a word that I don't remember how to spell or fat finger something. And so there's a few parts where I was like, I have no idea what I wrote here. But yeah, that was much better. I'm curious. So let's see. If Firecracker, what was the genre that you are submitting for your competition? The first one that I submitted for was, I believe, science fiction, but it was specifically horrific science fiction, if I remember correctly. But yeah, no, that was yeah, I think that's the thing about. Oh, let me get rid of these. There we go. I think that's the thing about these sprints though, is that uh 20 minutes always goes by pretty quickly. I never really realized that it doesn't take that long to kind of get back into that flow. Supernatural horror competition is a writing tournament, so we'll be battling against other writers with judges reviewing. Awesome. That's fun. Yeah, supernatural horror. I don't think I've ever written necessarily in that genre. I've done a decent amount of horror writing. I really do kind of like horror writing, but I don't think I've ever done supernatural. Is everybody in the competition writing in the same genre, or is it anything and everything? I think that too. There's also, I'll have to get this fixed for next time because I think I made it so that there was no latency, but I think that that's causing issues and creating even more of a lag or even more latency. So if there's a bit of a delay between when I respond and when you actually type, it's because of that. Actually, also, speaking of horror, the next video that I just finished the script for and am probably going to start shooting tomorrow or maybe the day after is in the horror genre. And so I'm hoping that enough people are interested in kind of horror. And I think that usually there's a lot of people that I think are interested in horror. I don't think there's as many people writing horror though, which is always interest, which is always an interesting thing to me. Premise wise, it's supernatural horror, but the competition can change the tone that fits their voice. Oh, competitors, sorry. I know that for my entry, I'm going to do more psychological. Awesome. My work in progress is a romantasy with mystery subplot. Very timely. That's, yeah. People seem to be, there's like this massive resurgence, it seems, when it comes to romantasy. There's a lot of, I think there's a lot of stories out. I mean, I don't think there are a lot of stories being published out there, but there's also a huge appetite for romantasy. But I think it's one of those genres that really won't ever go away. It just kind of changes and evolves. The joke is that the one thing that you can always count on not being written out of style is like vampires. People always say that vampires they'll never go out of style. And I think romantasy is up there with that as well. As far as like in the fantasy realm, in the realm of fantasy subgenres. What we will also probably do as well is I'm thinking one more sprint, because that will get us to about an hour and a half of this. And then maybe at that point, we will chat one more time for a bit longer, kind of see where we're at. And then we might wrap things up. Let's see. Do you have any advice on laying the groundwork for long-term character arc / plot without being heavy-handed, but also not being too slow to lose the interest of your readers? First book writer here. Yeah, actually, I think at least I think a lot of times when we are working on plotting out a character arc, we can almost do both at the same time, where we can kind of like be in the forest and get lost amongst the trees, right? We're really, really focused on the little details of this character arc, or this character. But I think that sometimes we can also zoom so far out and be focusing on this specific arc or this specific type of character archetype that we sort of lose, or we don't exactly see the details that could make this story unique, and we're trying to fit this idea that we want into like a predetermined archetype. So one of the things that I always suggest doing when it comes to laying the groundwork for that long-term character arc or plot is to think of whatever that character's starting position is. Start with, you've got the character, who they are at the start of the story. And then you've got the character, who they are at the end of the story, right? And for the most part, and in most cases, or actually, no, not in most cases, there's something to say if that character does not change, right? That character, whatever their belief or whatever their goal is, or whatever the thing is that is going to be character at the start of the story, character at the end, if that's the same, it's a little bit different of a conversation. But more often than not, that character at the end is going to be different. And the goal is to think about, well, how is that character going to be different? And this is where we can sometimes, and I had this a lot when I was first started writing and started first really, plotting out stories and working on my own fiction, but it's also something I see a lot happen to other writers as well. A lot of times new writers too, is that you almost get afraid of having too much of a change, or you almost get afraid of making your character, for lack of a better term, extreme. And when we look at who that character is at the start of the story and who they are at the end, what I would say is whatever that position is that they have at the start of the story and whatever it is at the end, to just dial it up a couple notches, make them a little bit more extreme, make them a little bit more steadfast in whatever that belief is, because then that can then give you the framework for what is going to be that catalyst that changes them, right? Because that'll be kind of your third point. What is that catalyst that's going to change them, and where does that occur, right? Because where that occurs, most times it's going to be towards the end of, like, you know, the ambiguous end of the second act or whatever, right? But most often than not, it's going to be like 3/5 of the way into your story, right? And then we get some kind of like reflection, because sometimes they'll be forced to change in some way, and then that will occur, and then they reject it, and then something happens again, and then they realize, I need to change to like get my goal, right? That's a very like common path. But the point is to make sure that you've got your character, you've got them going from here to here, and more often than not, it's like just make them a little bit more extreme, and then it becomes so much more clear where that sort of catalyst for change happens. And that's really where then your conflict is, because that arc you can then map onto the actual plot progression of your story. And wherever that big catalytic change is, a lot of times that catalytic change will then be centered around like major plot points and stuff. Emma, hey, good to see you. Thanks for the like. And for everybody else in here too, remember, you have to like the stream, please. But yes, it's good to see you, Emma. Thank you for hopping in. Emma has a great channel too, with great kind of writing advice and stuff. We've been kind of following each other back and forth, at least since I first started kind of appearing on here. So she has a great channel as well. Yeah, good. I'm glad. That's helpful. My concern is writing a Game of Thrones story where people say that Dany made a dramatic turn without laying the groundwork. I disagree with her arc, wasn't defined, but I see what people mean by it. You must like the stream or terrible things will happen. True. Yeah, so I think the biggest thing for the Game of Thrones Daenerys arc and the backlash for it is because that was a bit of like this entropic it was going to self-destruct because they were under such a pressure cooker. No matter how they would have changed in one season, a character that has had 8 seasons to grow or move into this corruption arc, it was kind of bound to fail. The books, I think, will do a much better job when and if they come out, just because I think that just in general, George R.R. Martin has like a much better sense of how that arc happens. And he's kind of been laying the groundwork and foreshadowing that for, books 1 through, 5, I think. 5. So the books already kind of have that groundwork. But the problem is that, especially if you're doing like a corruption arc, it's better. So I know we talked about these extremes, and then there's this one catalytic moment. If you're afraid that it's like too drastic of a shift tonally, then it needs to be sort of this like, death by 1,000 cuts. But then there's like this one really, really big one that really makes a shift. Or you have it where they're very, very sure of a certain thing, and you give it time that when you have that belief or that the thing that they value, the virtue, when it breaks, that you need to kind of give it that time to be broken and then reflected upon. And I think that's a really important part, is the reflection, because if for instance the Daenerys Targaryen type example, if there was more time where she kind of does this corruption arc, and then she can sort of reflect on that arc, and we can kind of see this new character that became, and it's not just like this bad version of Daenerys or something that happens over the course of like a couple of episodes, but we're actually able to see this new character that kind of comes out of this event, or comes out of this character change, this character arc. That I think is sometimes more important than the actual character arc and the change, but it's giving the time for that new character to like build their autonomy or build their agency to then justify this huge departure. And that sort of comes again with knowing who this character is at the start, and what is like the things that they believe in and value, and they'll never break that value, how they change and who they are after. And then what is the thing that made them change in such a dramatic way, and building to that sort of conflict too, building to that change should will just add a ton of tension to your plot. More Walter White. Yeah, I think, yeah, exactly. I think that I think the showrunners had a really good sense of how Walter White's story was going to end. And so you can look back at the entire progression of the entire 4 seasons or so. I think it was 4 seasons. Or was it 5? I think it was 4. I think they stopped it at 4. But you can look back on all of those episodes and all of the shows, and everything makes sense of him progressing to this this corrupted character by greed and pride and envy and all these things, right? We see the slow kind of the 1,000 cuts that occur in Walter White's life that lead him to his eventual collapse or his demise. Yeah, of course. That's what we do here on these these streams. Which there will be more. I think I'm looking again. I'm keeping an eye on my green dot if YouTube is yelling at me for too low of a bit rate or something. And we've been green for a while, which is a good sign. But let's see how long we've been going. An hour and a half. Okay, let's do another sprint. You guys can keep kind of chatting in the chat or throwing stuff in there, and we'll revisit it after we do a little bit more writing. So music's going back on. I'm going to mute myself, and I'll throw our amazing timer back up. Okay. Pause our music and let's take these guys off. How did that sprint go for everybody? What was that writing session? Crunchy Chicken, what a name. Stellar job. I appreciate you saying so about my videos. Thank you. I'm glad they're helpful. The thing about writing advice is it's something that's hard to give because there's a lot of subjectivity. And I try to not just give the broadest advice or talk about the kind of the broadest of topics, to kind of avoid just adding to kind of the noise, or telling the same stuff that everyone has been probably telling you, or, the royal you. But there's also something to say about, I have a lot of experience, coaching, not just like writing coaching, but also athletics and stuff. And you'd be surprised that you could learn the same technique for years and years and years from whatever coaching staff. And the minute that you step outside that staff and you learn the exact same thing from someone that says it just a little bit of a different way, that how much that might resonate or stick. So I try to not, get too hung up on this topic has been talked to death, because I think that everybody who talks about a topic or everybody who talks about a part of storytelling, will come at it with like something unique or something that's a little bit different, even if it's just the way that they say it or present it. Kyron asked, how do you keep track of everything in the story? They mean like histories of certain things and characters. Is there a way to keep notes? To your question of if there were other ways, of course, yeah. I think there are. There's a lot of like softwares, and there's a lot of gadgets or whatnot that you can use to take notes. Personally, I've always kind of believed in like a massive, like call it like the Bible, or like your story Bible. And it's basically, for me, that's just like a Word document or an Excel document that just has all these different categories of different parts of my story or different subjects and whatnot. I think that the try different systems, because my system isn't going to be the thing that might work for you, and the system of somebody else in chat might not be the one that works for you either. I know people, and I've seen people, and I've seen writers that keep everything straight on literally a cork board with Post-it notes and that kind of stuff, or they use like flashcards and everything. You can go into that kind of detail and you can build your own sort of story Bible. But I think at the end of the day, the important parts are going to be the parts that actually are going to have an impact on your story. And a lot of times you can sort of, you can write a story with very little, like, of all that research and all of that. Sometimes it's world building. Sometimes it's histories of characters and backstories and stuff. Sometimes you almost, it's like the ultimate procrastination mechanism that you can have is working on your story Bible and basically building into that instead of actually writing. Because I think the important thing is that you find and you practice and you do different methods of keeping notes, whether that's a notebook or a Word document or a Notion, or some other kind of wiki type service. But the important part is that those resources are helping you write your story. Unless, of course, you just kind of want to world build for the sake of world building. There's nothing wrong with that either. If you're doing it for a D&D campaign, or if you are doing kind of a world building exercise and you don't really have a story in mind, but you want to build a world and then maybe there'll be a story in it, you can do that too. But the biggest thing is to just try different systems out. When I was early on, I tried all sorts of different, methods and whatnot. And eventually just kind of stuck with good old fashioned Google Docs. So, but it depends. Good. People made some decent progress. That's good. Does anybody have any word counts that they were trying to hit or that they needed to hit? It's fine to talk about writing advice. Other writers talk about. It's creatively unchallenging. You could provide links to videos you agree with. Yeah, I could. I think that too. I don't know. It's weird. There's this like weird bit of apprehension or even tabooness, I think, about linking to other creators like too much, where it becomes kind of spammy. I don't know. I think the nice thing about having kind of entered this space is that there are the creators on the platform. There are communities that are being built, and we talk to each other and stuff like that. But I think it just can be hard to. There's a weird hurdle, I feel like, when it comes to overly promoting stuff. It's something that I definitely want to do more of, and especially with some of the people that I interact with and kind of collaborate with, or I guess not really collaborate with, but like talk about this kind of stuff, from creator to creator. So yeah, I agree with you, but it's there is, even though I don't feel it as much, I think there is kind of a interesting stigma around that part of either shouting people out or promoting other people's work. I don't know. I have to think more about that. There's some programs out there that you can use as well to help organize and keep track of your notes. I like using Campfire, but I've heard a lot of people using World Anvil too. Yes, Campfire and World Anvil are great. Those are really good products. I remember when those things were first getting started. I think Campfire actually is when I remembered when that was first like becoming a thing that people were using. And the idea of like creating your own wiki has always been a really interesting thing, and something that if I had more patience for, I would totally use. There's also you can also use Obsidian and Notion. I've seen people use those as also templates for keeping track of notes or creating, I keep saying wiki, but like creating a massive kind of repository for your like world and your stories and stuff. I'm currently at 5.6K. Don't have a word count since I don't think that's a strong indicator of strong writing. So finishing is the most important. Then, awesome. Yeah, that's good. So I know you're writing a competition. Is that competition have a word cap, or a minimum or something? Because sometimes those have word caps. But I agree. Just because the story's longer or shorter doesn't necessarily mean that it's better or worse. I guess I'm thinking more about it. The thing about like shouting out other creators that I agree with, I think that I'm all for that. I think that it's finding the right way to do that. Because if I've never like interacted with somebody that I agree with and I create a video and it's on a similar subject or something like that, I think that there's a fear that people have with them being called out like they are either ripping off their idea or stealing material or something. Which again is like I don't know if that's a valid concern or if people actually think that or anything. But yeah, I definitely try to hop on other people's streams that I interact with if they are streaming, and support kind of that way. It's funny though. It feels like yeah, it's sometimes you feel like you're on an island, but you know that you're not. Um, but yeah, it's yeah, it's something to think about. Um, Word count goal cap is 25K. Interesting. Wow, that's a pretty big cap. I think most of the competitions I've entered, no, I think Riders of the Future, that cap was either 8,000 or 7.5. I don't think it was double digits. Um, but yeah, no, I think that, oh, wow. Thank you for the 5 gifts. I apologize. I don't think I'd be able to pronounce the first part of your name. The Bard. Thank you. 5 gifted memberships. I really appreciate that. Talk about like the first stream back, and we get a gift. Like we get gifted subs. That's awesome. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you so much. Um, yeah, I definitely though. One thing that I was wanting to kind of talk about as well with these streams kind of coming back that I do want to talk more openly and almost be more collaborative kind of with the audience on topics and subjects. Um, Thank you so much. I yeah, appreciate it very much. Um, but I do want to kind of collaborate a little bit more, or at least gain viewer kind of feedback and input on different video ideas, and not necessarily like on the ideas themselves, but more so on the things that people are really either struggling with or working on, or even things that they feel like haven't necessarily been discussed nearly as much. I think that all of that stuff, and in saying that, the best way to sort of, I think for me to get a pulse on what people actually need is of course by like talking to them, right? I also do like writing and editing services and coaching on the side, and I used to, or not on the side. I do that as a big part of like the Wrestling with Words brand and business. But I used to do a lot more like manuscript critiques and manuscript like editing. Like people submit it, and then we do almost like quarterly. I'll edit a quarter, send it back, and then kind of progressively do that. But there wasn't a lot of like interaction between me and them, aside from, small check-ins and stuff. And sometimes when you're creating long form videos, that can also be the case a little bit, where you only really get to see or get an update on the projects that I'm working on, or the video ideas or anything like that, via like community posts or when the video is actually out, right? And I think that being able to sort of connect with the audience on a very personal level in this regard, and figure out and try to understand what people are actually wanting help with, or wanting some kind of feedback on, or that kind of thing. I think that's a lot more pure in understanding, what writers are thinking and talking and looking for in terms of like on this platform, and in this space. My biggest struggle is how to prioritize and time the stream of information given to the readers. Yeah, it's funny actually. There was a book that I read. I think it was called Spectacles of the Void, and it is a book that has stuck with me conceptually for like all of the fiction that I read and write, and kind of analyze, I guess, or provide some kind of analysis for. But this book, it was about writing horror, and it argued, or it spoke about, and I'll probably talk about this book. This will not be the first, or this is not the first. This will not be the last time I talk about this book. But what was interesting about it is that it broke down horror in such a like simple way, that essentially was saying that horror is really all about withholding and giving information. That is the real horror. The real horror is not having the information. But I've kind of taken that to fiction in general and stories in general, where a story is really just a controlled stream, as you said, of information. And it's a controlled stream of information from a specific and targeted perspective. And I think that the way the cop out answer, or the cop out bit of, I guess, advice or something, for prioritizing and even timing that stream of information, is by consuming stories and time, and being just familiar with like that rhythm of stories, whether it's the time you spend reading or watching film, or however else you might consume a story. But it's also through the act of like writing and creating a story, and understanding like if you're hitting these like emotional beats, or if you feel like your story's like lagging or slowing down or something. I think that even you just mentioning that, and understanding that this is like a piece that it's hard to, or it's a struggle, right? Is understanding that control, and how to release that information. Most people, I don't think, even realize that that's really what storytelling is all about. It's all about the timing and the way in which you deliver information, right? You can look at comedy, right? You can tell the same joke like 5 different ways, but the funniest way is the way that has the timing of the information of the joke, right? The same thing goes for like any other piece of fiction. Plot twists are like notoriously driven by this thing, right? And I think that plot twists are like the 20th century evolution of storytelling. You see such a departure from strictly like literary fiction and into kind of like genre fiction. And a lot of that is because of like the inclusion of plot twists and the inclusion of, or the refining of storytelling techniques. And a lot of it comes from being really good at controlling that information and delivering it in a way that is interesting and engaging and filled with conflict and filled with tension. I think that's all kind of in that realm of things. Right. Well, I think what we'll do is we'll wrap it up there. I'm This was like kind of the test, the test stream, and part of it was to kind of, we're going to play with a bunch of different hours. Okay. Be prepared. There might be some weird hours that I'm going to try to do this. Part of it is based on connection and demand and stuff like that, for the internet. But another part of it is just kind of see what hours work best for people and for kind of like the audience at large. I will leave these up though. There'll be like a playlist of stuff on the channel. They're not just going to be unlisted or thrown off. I think that it's, I think that coming back to some of these, they're helpful. Whether we're talking about stuff or you're just trying to scratch that itch of getting need something in the background to kind of to write to or whatnot. But yeah, I really appreciate everybody kind of coming in. I appreciate all the comments, all the chatting, and kind of hearing about your guys' projects and everything. Be sure to like the stream before you guys hop off. Hopefully we'll have my next video will be out sometime in the next week or so. And then after that, we're going to try to do about a video, an essay type video, once a month, maybe twice a month, and then try to do the podcast weekly. I have a couple of scripts that are kind of drafted and ready to be filmed. So that's kind of what my my weekend looks like coming up. So thank you, everybody. I'll hang around in the chat a little bit longer, but I am going to start shutting down.